Okay, our next speaker is a super powerhouse. She's a lifelong nuclear activist, and she was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm still waiting for mine in the mail, but she was already nominated. So I want you to give a super, super applause to Miss Helen Caldicott. Hold on, I said a super, super. That was just a super. Can we give a super, super applause to Helen Caldicott? I'll fix that. I'll fix that. My apologies. She is not Miss Helen Caldicott. She is Dr. Helen Caldicott. One more time.
It's hard for me to refocus now. I've been in this country now for 6 weeks. I came from Australia partly to come here because I was invited by Occupy Portland. Yeah. I have never looked at Hanford. I didn't do it today because we didn't have time. I've written about it extensively in my books. Portland was set up, Hanford was set up. Did I say Hanford? Yes. Hanford was set up virtually to blow up the world. Hanford has produced the plutonium for about 77,000 hydrogen bombs. And as I talk, I'm looking at policemen, and I'm wondering what the policemen are doing here. Because we're all conservatives, and we're for conserving life on the planet. And I don't know why we have to be watched over by policemen, who also probably have children and want their children to survive as well. Right? Anyway, Hanford was set up during the Manhattan Project to manufacture plutonium from uranium, which was mined in Canada and brought here and put in, I think they built 7 nuclear reactors to fission uranium and manufacture plutonium. You should know that in every 1,000 megawatt nuclear power plant, 500 pounds of plutonium are made every year, and you only need 10 pounds to make an atomic bomb. So any country that buys a reactor from you, and you're selling them all over the world now to Saudi Arabia and other such really democratic countries, they can make 50 bombs a year. So nuclear power plants and nuclear reactors are bomb factories, which brings me back to Hanford. They made huge, huge, huge quantities of plutonium. Now let me tell you about plutonium. Plutonium is an iron analogue. In other words, the body thinks it's iron. So if you inhale a tiny amount, like a microgram, a millionth of a gram of plutonium, and it lodges in your lung, it irradiates a tiny volume of cells. And almost certainly years later, because the incubation time for cancer is 5 to 70 years, you may get a bit of pain in your chest, and you may cough up some blood, and you think, oh hell, I'll forget about it. And then the next day you cough up some more blood, so you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you must have an x-ray, and this time you need an x-ray. Don't get your teeth x-rayed every year, it's dangerous. But this time you need one. And the x-ray shows a mass in your chest, and you've got cancer of the lung. People with cancer of the lung don't survive. Now, the body thinks plutonium is iron, so in fact if it gets into the bloodstream, it's deposited in the liver where iron is stored, where it can cause liver cancer. It goes to the bone where hemoglobin is formed, and of course hemoglobin is made a lot of iron. You know, when you lick some blood, it tastes like iron, like rusty iron, and so it can irradiate cells that are going to form bone cells, and those cells become malignant and form osteogenic sarcoma, or cancer of the bone, which is what poor Teddy Kennedy's son had, Edward, and had his leg amputated. We usually can't cure that because one cell will break away from the cancer mass, go up in a vessel, lodge in the lung, and the lung becomes full of metastases from the bone cancer. So cancer is a parasite that grows regardless of what we treat it with, and the patient withers away, as we see and then when the patient dies, the cancer dies. So it's a parasite. So it takes a single particle of plutonium in your lung or in your blood or in your bone marrow or your liver or your testicle, which it's like that plutonium has a predilection for testicles, and fetuses, and it can damage a fetus in the first 3 months of intrauterine life to cause deformities that thalidomide did, where babies were born with single eyes, no brains, no arms, and the like. That's called teratogenesis, damage of a normal, genetically normal fetus. That's what plutonium does. The placenta lets nothing through, no viruses or anything, but plutonium gets through because it's an iron analogue and the baby needs iron to grow. So plutonium is incredibly toxic and its half-life is 24,400 years, which you multiply by 10 to get its total radiological life, which is 250,000 years. So Hanford out there established the plutonium cycle. God damn it. Yeah. And it made 77,000 hydrogen bombs from that plutonium. Your country has a nuclear addiction and it's sick. And tonight, it could blow up the world with Russia. Do you know that of the 23,000 H-bombs in the world, Russia and America own 97% of them? Do you know that New York City is targeted with 40 hydrogen bombs as I speak? Yet they talk about terrorists. Who are the real terrorists? The Russians. And you. Washington is targeted with 60 hydrogen bombs. McNamara, who was Kennedy's Secretary of Defense, and I wrote an article about that. Every town in your country, the population of 50,000, is targeted with at least one hydrogen bomb. You've targeted the whole of China in your wisdom since the end of the Cold War. The whole of Russia's targeted, with 60 targeted on Moscow. Your policy in the Pentagon is to fight and win a nuclear war. Now, there's a gentleman in a suit there who's listening to me, but he started to walk away. I don't know why.
Oh no, dog.
What? No, but I wonder why you're walking away.
Getting a taco.
Getting a taco.
This way.
Or do you disagree with what I said?
Yes.
I thought you did, but you can't have the stage because I've got it, okay? And what I'm saying is accurate. Accurate according to Robert McNamara, all the literature, and I'm not bullshitting, I'm speaking the truth as a doctor. And don't tell me I bullshit. Because it makes me really angry, because tonight we could blow up the world by computer error. There are 1,000 people hacking into the early warning system and the Pentagon per day. Chinese hackers, young boys with maldeveloped frontal lobes who are brilliant, you know, Asperger's. I don't know how we're still here. And Russia and America have thousands of bombs on hair trigger alert, ready to be launched with a decision time by Putin or Obama of 3 minutes. And once launched, they go half an hour from launch to land on Moscow, all the cities in Europe, in England, Australia, Canada. And do you know that 1,000 bombs dropping on 100 cities would create such a huge firestorm, and cities are full of toxic inflammatory materials, oil, you name it. A huge cloud of toxic black radioactive smoke will rise into the stratosphere, circling the Earth with a cloud so thick it blocks out the sun for up to 10 years, creating a short ice age, a nuclear winter, and the end of most organisms on Earth, including ourselves. Now that could happen tonight, but why? Because Russia and America are now best friends. The Cold War's over, which is what initiated Hanford with America's paranoia towards Russians. And communists, ooh, communism, woo, naughty word. How ridiculous. When I first came here in 1978, most people I talked to said they'd rather be red than dead. I said, what? They said, yeah, we don't want to be communists. I mean, it was a collective psychosis. A psychosis in America. So I got together 23,000 doctors and we started describing the medical effects of nuclear war. Now Richland's targeted. Poor Richland is a town that grew out of making the nuclear weapons in Hanford to blow up the planet. Now they're very pleased because they've got a lot of employment because they're employed to clean it up, which they will never do. It is physically, scientifically impossible to clean up Hanford. It's a nuclear wasteland. It will never be cleaned up. The Hanford River will continue to be radioactive virtually for the rest of time. There are, what, 12 tons of plutonium still there? The poor people of Richland, but you're targeted. So let me drop a bomb here. More than one bomb you've got, for sure. And the Russian bombs are big, inaccurate bombs. And that's what you're targeted with. So, just imagine, you're not listening to the radio. You know, sometimes you hear, woo! We are just testing the emergency broadcasting system. This time you'd hear, woo! You are under nuclear attack. You've got 10 minutes to reach the nearest fallout shelter. And I'm speaking reality. Do you know where one is? And when it comes in at 20 times the speed of sound, and you won't hear it. And it will explode here on this park with the heat inside the centre of the sun. And dig a hole 1/2 mile wide and 300 feet deep, converting you and all the earth below in the buildings to radioactive fallout shot up in the mushroom cloud. 5 miles from here, everybody is vaporized, turned into gas. And there's a little boy in Hiroshima reaching up to catch a red dragonfly on his hand against the blue of the sky like now. And there was a blinding flash. And he disappeared and left his shadow on the pavement, which is now in the Hiroshima Museum. 20 miles from here in all directions, everyone is lethally burnt. A burn patient is the most difficult patient we ever treat. Hundreds of units of blood and fresh frozen plasma. There are only 2,000 burn beds in the whole of America. None of those people or patients will survive. Winds of 500 miles an hour sucked into the centre and pick people up and turn them into missiles travelling at 100 miles an hour till they hit the nearest solid object and die. Then the whole area will be engulfed in a firestorm of 3,000 square miles. Everything will burn even in the middle of winter. And as everything is targeted right across your land and across Canada, these fires will coalesce and America will burn coast to coast, north to south. And you will disappear. And so will Russia. And so will Europe. And Europe is covered with nuclear reactors as a U. 1 megaton bomb hitting a 1,000 megawatt reactor, according to the Scientific America, would contaminate permanently an area the size of West Germany. No one could live there again. I've just described Armageddon, which this place initiated and created. And the Russians stupidly and blindly copied and followed because they want to be superpowers as well. I've come here thinking a lot, not knowing what the answers are. They've got Bechtel in there, a wicked organisation which has been involved in all things nuclear and building reactors and the like and bombs forever, run by previous Secretary of State George Shultz. They are cutting corners. It's all about money. They have no idea what to do with this waste. And you've read, you know, 177 tanks, 58 of them had liquid waste, I can't remember. But to try and get this waste into a building where they can turn it into glass, which won't be the answer because plutonium is an alpha emitter and the alpha particles crack the glass. They devitrify it and out the waste seeps over centuries. So it's not the answer. So it won't work. But the waste is all gluggy. And they put so many chemicals, carbon tetrachloride and all sorts of ghastly carcinogenic chemicals mixed with the high-level radioactive waste, and it's so gluggy. To get it through those pipes, they have to sort of squirt it like a turkey baster because it will obstruct the pipes. And if it obstructs the pipes, hydrogen could build up like at Fukushima and explode. And also, there's a lot of plutonium in that waste, and the particles are 10 times larger than they thought. And they're worried that plutonium could build up, and you only need 10 pounds for critical mass to get together, and you get a nuclear explosion, which could happen out there. Also, the tanks are dangerous in themselves, and hydrogen is building up. You could have a hydrogen explosion. Now Richland is south of here. If that happens, there'll be so much radiation coming out, people will die of acute radiation illness within the first 2 weeks, with their hair falling out, their gut cells dying, terrible bloody diarrhea, and their white blood cells and platelets die, and they will bleed to death, or they will die of massive infection, like patients with AIDS die. This is on the cards any day from Hanford. Then you've got that reactor there, which is owned by you. It's a publicly owned reactor. You will not allow that extension of license, for whatever reason. It's very dangerous because it has spent fuel pools on the top of the roof full of incredible radioactive material like Fukushima. That could go. I'm 73 and I've been doing this work for 41 years. So really, yeah, but it doesn't help. Doing the same lecture. Look at this little crowd. It's a poor little crowd. We all came because we care, but it's a poor little crowd. Where are all the people out here, for Christ's sake? Driving their cars. Do they know? No, they don't know. No, they don't understand how radiation causes cancer. They don't know that each dose they receive causes cancer. They don't know what's out there. They don't know. And as Jefferson said, an educated democracy will behave in a responsible fashion. I know that because I got on television in the 80s with the help of Sally Field Lilly, Tomlin Candy, Berg, and a whole lot of actresses, Chevy Chase, to talk to the American people about the medical effects of nuclear war. And then we could educate 80%. So from 78, when everyone said, yeah, they'd rather be dead than be communist, we described what it meant, that I've just described to you. And at the end of 5 years, 80% of people opposed nuclear war. I met with Ronald Reagan in the White House for an hour and a quarter and held his hand and described it to him. He then started working with Gorbachev. So that was the second American Revolution. I want you to understand that. Peaceful, sagacious, Gandhian. The second American Revolution. We brought an end to the Cold War when Reagan started working with Gorbachev, and Gorbachev brought down the Berlin Wall. We need to honour ourselves for that, but it hasn't done any good, because they still want to build more nuclear weapons. There's a sickness in the brains of these men's minds. I think it's located in their reptilian midbrains, which have a toxic reaction to testosterone. And they somehow need nuclear weapons to power them up and make them feel more male, more masculine. I don't know. But in the Department of Energy, they call nuclear power hard energy, like it's got an erection. And they call solar power and wind power soft, like it's flaccid with no erection. They're the terminologies that are used, and they're very sexual. And I'm interested in what causes the nuclear illness infecting our planet. And it's not Hanford. It's not the number of bombs. It's these men's brains. And 1 in 25 people are sociopaths. They have no moral conscience. They're brilliant with no moral... And that's Cheney and Rumsfeld and the people that run that joint out there. Yeah. And we, who are fairly not neurotic and fairly stable, we don't have the energy, the neurotic drive, to take over the planet and destroy it. So therefore we've got to rise up. And I would say particularly the women, because we're highly intelligent. The corpus callosum, which connects the right and left brain, is larger in women than men, so we're much more in touch with our intuition and the like. And I'm not putting down men here, don't take it personally. I'm talking generically, okay? Don't get upset, because men tend to. But it's the women, we're so wimpy, we're so pathetic, you know? And often a man will come up and say something, I'll say, that's great, run for Congress, and he'll stick his chest out and say, yeah. And a woman will come up with a very good idea, and I say, run for Congress. She literally takes 2 steps back and says, who, me? You see, why are we so pathetic? We're 53% of the Earth's population. We're full of estrogen, progesterone and oxytocin, which is a major nurturing hormone. And unless we step up to the plate, we're doomed. We're doomed from global warming, we're doomed from nuclear war, and we're doomed from nuclear power. There are solutions to all three. There's a book over there I saw on the table called Carbon Free, Nuclear Free, which I commissioned, which is the prescription for survival for America for energy. You can have all the energy you need right now from all renewable energies. Why aren't there solar panels on every single roof that I see here? Why not? Because your Congress is full of corporate prostitutes. That's what they are. And what people don't understand in this country is that you are their leaders and they are your representatives. And if you leave a vacuum in Congress, into that vacuum move the corporations. The president is not your leader. You are his leaders. And what Occupy has to do is take over this flaming country. You have to occupy Congress because it's yours. It's your money, you built it, and they're your representatives. You have to occupy the Pentagon, which spends $1 trillion a year of your money on death. Death. When you have no free medical care system. The richest country on earth with no free medical care system? That's unbelievable. That's called civilization. Having it free, I go to the doctor, I get treated, I go next door, the government gives me the money in cash in my hand. That's called civilization. You know who would have approved of that? Jesus. He was a socialist. Leave your worldly goods and follow me. Not that I'm a Christian, I'm a pantheist. I worship nature. Yeah. So, the Occupy movement is the most exciting thing I've seen for the last 20 years. I went to Zuccotti Park. There were women in fur coats, men in pinstripe suits, homeless people, dogs, kids, you know, the whole thing. You have such a responsibility on your shoulders, I can't tell you. And you now have the attention of the media. And you've got to be clever. Demonstrations won't do it, petitions won't do it. But Occupy will. Just take it over. Take your sleeping bags and do it. Takes guts, you know. And as Martin Luther King said, if you don't have something worth dying for, you're not living. That's true. I've had 8 death threats. I was prepared to die to save possibly the only life in the universe. I don't want to die. But I'm 73, so I'm almost finished now anyway. But I care about the children as I'm a paediatrician. I took the Hippocratic Oath and all the world's children are my patients. So I practice global preventive medicine. And now I'm handing the torch to you because the planet is in the intensive care unit, critically ill, and you are all now physicians to a planet that's dying. We can close down all the reactors in your country. With the carbon-free, nuclear-free thing and renewable energy, we can build, you know, employ millions of people with windmills and solar panels and electric cars, the whole thing, it's all here. So that's 2 things, global warming, and no one will copy, we won't save the planet unless you do it. Because you're the model for the rest of the world. We don't like you very much, but you export all your propaganda and everyone copies and emulates you, right? So if you do it, you can save the planet from global warming, from nuclear power, and we can abolish all nuclear weapons because the Russians don't want theirs. It's up to you, and you've got a president now who would do that with Russia. But he said when he gave his speech at Prague, I can't do it without you. And I don't see people stepping up to the plate. And what this country needs now is a revolution. And you are starting the revolution. This is your responsibility. So good luck to you. I doff my cap to your courage, your intelligence, your perspicacity, your perseverance, and I'll help you. But this is the only thing that really matters now. This is the only thing that matters. You're not here for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't pursue happiness. Happiness comes by serving others, by spending a day in the clinic with my patients. Happiness comes by teaching children. Happiness comes by working with wonderful people and saving the planet. That's the key to true happiness. We're here to serve. We're here to serve, not make ourselves happy. Thank you.
Yeah.